This conference will now be recorded.
Showtime with Dave. I'm your host, Dave Reed, and want to welcome you to our virtual GOMA Tools Cafe. For those of you the first time in, this is a series that we started in light of not being able to meet at our all hands in person this year. Let you guys know that we're about halfway through our virtual Tools Cafe session. And this week we've got some very exciting tools to share with you. But before we do that, I'd like to go over a few of the ground rules, house rules for the meeting today. So when you're logging in, if you could please log in with your full name so we know who's here. We're going to ask that you please turn off your camera. Obviously, I'll turn mine off in a minute. We don't want to be distracting to the people that are presenting. Big thing, especially if you're on computer audio or your phone, please mute either your phone or your computer microphone when you're not speaking. And then during the question and answer session, which I'll cover in just a minute, introduce yourself with your name and affiliation before you ask a question if you're going to do that over the phone or through your audio. We're also encouraging people to ask questions through the chat box. You can ask at any time during anyone's presentation. This has been very popular with the presenters. It's giving them an opportunity to really speak at depth, for their time frame. So some speakers have built in some questions and answers into their talks. Some people will speak for the entire time allotted to them. So please ask a question if they provide that opportunity to you. If not, throw it in the chat box, and we will have time at the end of everyone's presentation today to go over and cover questions. So let's see here. And then if you're having technical assistance or if you need technical assistance, sorry about that, please use the chat box. We'll be monitoring that as well. So I think going forward with the next slide. Oh, and then the webinar will be recorded. It looks like we're being recorded right now. So that's great. So here are today's tools that we're going to be showcasing with you. Michaela will be talking with us today about Gulftree. It's an awesome application that they've developed. It's a decision support tool. We've got Rosalie that will be talking to us today about GRIIDC, and then just a little side bit of information. Winner chicken dinner. GRIIDC has 100% participation in tools. GRIIDC has been at every Tools Cafe since we started. So, and that they are the only one. I mean, I'm glad to have everybody here, but kudos and thanks a lot, GRIIDC, for doing this for every Tools Cafe that we've ever offered. And then finally, Justin's going to be talking about the Deepwater Horizon Project Tracker. That even though we've sunsetted, we're in the process of sunsetting the GOMRI effort, the Deepwater Horizon Project Tracker is still going strong. It's still collecting a lot of great information, and Jess is going to talk to us today about that. So before we get into the presentations, we've got a few minutes. I'd like to introduce our sponsor at Esri. Keith will be talking to us today about some applications that Esri has to offer that are related to our decision and support tools. And so with that, I think I'm going to throw it over to Keith and let him take it away. So Keith, it's all yours, man.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks. It's good to be here. Thanks, everyone, for attending. I've got a couple things I want to share today. First of all, I'm going to be, I guess, talking about database and decision support tools and theme to align with the theme, and what we're doing with SDG 14.1. Just to give you an idea of who we are, so I'm Keith Van Grafflin. I'm the Ocean Content Lead for the Living Atlas of the World at Esri. I'm a product engineer, and I work mainly with our user community to make their data available to the broader community. I work directly with Lorraine Tai, who is the Director of Earth Science Solutions, and she works in industry marketing. So she's the one that made this possible for Esri to be able to attend and sponsor these events. So big thanks and kudos to Lorraine. And just a reminder that our Esri Ocean Weather and Climate GIS Forum is coming up on November 4th and 5th. It's virtual and complimentary, so I encourage you folks to sign up and attend and attend that abbreviated event catered towards virtual So just an overview, sustainable development goals are, they're important, and they give us an opportunity as individuals, as companies, as organizations to do better and make a change. And we're really thrilled to be working with our teammates, our partners, the GEO, the Group on Earth Observations, the UN Environment, NOAA, the Plymouth Marine Laboratory, and the UN SDG folks on Sustainable Development Goal 14, life below water. So for the past year, we've been working with the team on identifying an index of coastal eutrophication. So first off, what is eutrophication? For those that don't know, this is when we have anthropogenic sources of nutrients that are making their way into the water through waterways, estuaries, rivers, runoff, and causing harmful events that can change the natural state of the environment. And these can be detected and monitored through satellite observations. So in the case of this project, we're using 2 different platforms to monitor coastal eutrophication. And it's really depicted and identified with chlorophyll A is a indicator for these areas, mainly because of the phytoplankton characteristics, and they carry chlorophyll A within them. So for this project, we had an overview of quantifying the number and severity of eutrophication events in the nearshore waters globally, and develop a methodology
Keith, I don't know if you can hear us, but I think we've lost your audio. Maybe it's me. Christina, are we still on? Can everybody hear me?
We lost Keith, but I still can hear you, Dave.
Okay. All right. Well, and did Keith, he's still on. I see him. Keith, if you can hear us, go ahead. All right, good. Well, sorry, Keith, we can circle back to you at the end, maybe get to your audio working. So with that, thank you for doing that. What I'm going to post real quick in the chat box for everybody is a link to today's agenda that's got the contact information for all of the presenters, as well as Keith, and links to their tools and other important information in that. So you guys can grab that there. So with that, I think we're just going to go ahead and start, and we'll just go ahead and jump into the presentation. So up first is, yes, Gulfstream, sorry, brain lapse. All right. Go ahead and go, sorry.
You're fine. I just happened to have it pop up in front of me. I'm like, okay, I'll start sharing my screen. All right, well, hello everyone. Thank you all for being here today. My name is Michaela Hemming. I'm an Extension Associate and Project Coordinator with Mississippi Alabama Sea Grant and Mississippi State University. And today I am going to be talking to you all about Gulftree. And if you're unfamiliar with Gulftree, it is, as you can read, a decision support search engine designed to help you confidently identify the best climate resilience tool for your specific needs. So what I'm going to go into today is why we even developed Gulftree, just get us all on the same page really quickly, talk a little bit about when Gulftree is best used, and then I'll do a kind of quick demonstration of using the web resource, and then I'll talk a little bit about some upcoming trainings we have before I let you go learn about the rest of the tools. So why Gulftree? Well, the world, as we all know, has this wonderful tendency to change all the time, and that means that we have to learn to adapt to it and to become more resilient to the punches it throws at us. And the positive side is that researchers have been expecting and preparing for this, and now there are hundreds of tools out there specifically focused on making certain aspects of our lives, like with extreme weather preparations and land use planning, more resilient. The problem, though, is that there are really hundreds of these tools out there, and it's really hard to compare them and decide which is the best fit for you. And so that's a huge barrier when it comes to folks who really need to implement climate resilience tools. And so from an effort to bridge that gap, Gulftree was born. And I keep talking about tools here, and I want to step back for a sec and make sure that we're all on the same page with what I'm talking about when I say tools. Climate resilience tools can be incredibly useful for a variety of different reasons, and there are a lot of them out there, and they all do different things in pretty different ways. So with Gulftree, we organize tools into 3 different tool types. Now, first, you have visualization tools, such as NOAA's Silverized Viewer shown here, which allows you to visualize or simulate potential futures and see what they would look like. Next are models, which are commonly a bit more complicated on the front end than something like a visualization tool. Because of this, they're commonly used in conjunction with visualization tools. And models like the Marsh equilibrium model shown here are helpful because they allow users to input various parameters to obtain some variety of outputs. Essentially, they're systematic depictions of current and or future conditions, and they can be numerical, theoretical, or conceptual. And last but certainly not least are decision support tools. Now, as you can see by that image of the Community Health and Resource Management, or CHARM tool, they're commonly not exactly your typical computer interface. CHARM, for example, uses that special pen that man is holding to interact with GIS data layers specific for community planning. And it does this on a regular table that they just put a white sheet down on. And in general, decision support tools help users develop these what-if scenarios of future conditions based on climate change and management decisions. The problem with this is that, like I mentioned, there are a lot of tools out there. And this is just to give you a bit of an impression of how intimidating it can be. This is a screenshot of some of the tools on Gulftree. You can see we currently have 108 tools on the site, and this is a living database, so it adds some as I continue to review them to put them on the site, and some of the time it goes down because tools get old, they stop getting updated, and they need to be retired sometimes. And as a fun fact, all of these different colors, while making it pretty, that wasn't the actual purpose of the colors. They all indicate the primary tool type. So you can see the yellow or orangey one is visualization tools, the teal is decision support, and the blue is models. Okay. So before I give you a demonstration and show you Gulftree in action, I want to kind of sidestep and make sure we're all clear on when in a project you should be utilizing this resource. And what I'm showing here on the screen is our pathway to climate resilience. So climate resilience is the end goal, and in order to reach it, you will typically have to apply a tool of some kind. And in order to apply a tool, of course, you need to choose a tool. But before you can choose a tool, you need to choose a specific question that you're trying to address with that tool. And before you can do that, you need to have identified a more broad issue in your community or for your project. So once you've identified that broad issue, narrowed it down into a specific question, you're ready to choose a tool to help answer that question with Gulftree. And then you can apply that tool to get closer to that end goal of climate resilience. So now I'm going to take you through using Gulftree, and hopefully can easily switch on over there. So I'm going to take you through the site just really quickly to get you acclimated. This is, of course, our home page. Here you have 2 different search functions for tools, but over here on the left, we also have a little bit more information. So you can always click in here, get a little bit more information about the project. There is a 12-minute tutorial video here if you want to share it for other folks to figure out how to use it and everything like that. And then we also have a full 40-minute presentation if you're really interested in the history and the background of the Gulf Tree project and all of the stakeholder engagement we did to make it happen and applicable. We also have a lot of other resources on Gulf Tree. So we have a full glossary, A to Z, as well as case study libraries, resource libraries, some data sources that may be helpful in case you have a tool that you want to use, but it requires data that you just don't have at the moment. That might be in one of these. There are some typical FAQs, and we also do something a little bit unique here in that we have a list of retired tools. Now, of course, this isn't every tool in existence that's been retired. There are plenty of them, but these are tools that either were going to be put on Gulf Tree or were on Gulf Tree and have since been retired. And what you see here is a list of what that tool was and short explanation of why it was retired, either why we decided to retire it at Gulf Tree or whether the actual tool developer themselves decided to retire it. And where at all possible, we will list a tool that has superseded it so that you can still access the same information or the same type of information. And then, of course, we have more information on the partners and organizations that worked to develop Gulf Tree, how the original project was funded, and contact information for general inquiries and all of the original project partner organizations. But moving back to the home page here, we can go back to these big buttons right in the middle. And this is our filtered search, which is our more advanced search. I typically don't recommend people who are new to Gulf Tree starting in that side. I recommend they start on the guided search right here. So the guided search is the one I recommend for newer users because it's so simple. It takes you through just 5 quick, typically high narrowing questions. And so the main goal is to watch that tool counter here in the bottom left count down as you select the filters that you're looking for a tool to comply with. Now, this first question is asking about the tool's function, really why you're looking for a tool or a model. So for my purposes here, I'm making up a random scenario, and I'm going to say that I'm specifically interested in visualizing climate projections. And you can see with just that one filter, I've already narrowed down to 63 tool matches. And just a note, if you're ever curious about the exact definition that we use for all of these different filters, that's accessible either in the glossary that I showed y'all earlier in our resources section, or you can type it up here. You just start typing any of the definitions you're looking for, any of the terms that you've seen on the site, and you can pull up our definition so you can make sure that it's exactly what you're looking for. But so I'm interested in visualizing climate projections. I'm going to submit that and move on to the second question, where we're getting a lot more narrow about the specific topic areas that I'm interested in. Now, I'm not really sure there's a lot of different options here, and I mean like quite a lot of different options here. This is where it can get a little bit confusing, and you can see that you really don't want to add too many choices here so that you don't want to narrow it too far. So I'm going to go into planning and land use, and I'm going to specifically be looking at vulnerability. I think that's appropriate for my purposes, the sort of thing I'm working on. So you can see I've narrowed down to 35 tool matches now. The third question, a necessary one, where do I need the tool to work? There is a map of applicable counties for Gulf Tree. Now, of course, many of the tools that are on Gulf Tree are cover a larger area, and many are actually national in scale, but these are the specific counties that Gulf Tree is covering. And for me, I work in Mississippi, Alabama, Northwest Florida, but I'm based in Mississippi. So I'm going to specifically cover shoreline counties in Mississippi. That's what I'm looking for. It didn't narrow me down too much more. I'm at 26 tools now. Moving forward to question 4, we're asking about level of effort. Now, don't judge me, I'm not lazy, but I do prefer using a low level of effort when I'm looking at a tool. And again, these have definitions, so you can get a specific idea of what we mean when we say low, moderate, or high. But I'm gonna go with low for now, and you can see we've dropped down to 14 tool matches. And now we have our final question in the guided search, which is on the cost. Tools are going to cost different things depending on what they do, how much research you might need to do utilizing the tool or the model, all of that sort of thing. There are some subscription fees, so it really ranges quite a bit. And of course, the easiest thing to do is say free, and you can see that that did not narrow our choices any further because most of the tools on Gulftree are free. So now at this point, we can go check out our tool matches. And it's kind of still a lot to look at. It's obviously better than the 108, but this is still a lot of different tools. So I'm going to now kind of look at if I can narrow it down a little bit further by clicking on this button here. So this change top filters brings you to the first page of our filtered or more advanced search. And you can see here, these are the same questions for the most part that we saw throughout the guided search. And the only addition here is the climate change themes filter. But here, I'm going to go back into climate change topics because I think I can be a little bit more specific than just vulnerability. And specifically with my work, I specialize in sea level rise. So I'm going to look at flooding, and I'm going to add in sea level rise. And we got down a little bit further to 11 tools. So now I'm going to move over to the second page of our advanced search feature, and you can see we've got quite a few more filters here. So I had mentioned that I was interested in climate projections, right? So I'm going to go over to projection timescale and home in a little bit more. I'm interested in multi-decadal, so that knocked off another tool, and let's also add in short-term projections. I want them to be able to do both. And then finally, I'm going to go over and look at tool outputs, and I want to be able to get some GIS layers to take off and do my own thing with. So I'm going to select that with as well. And you can see that has narrowed me down to a number that's a lot easier to look at all of the tools for. So I'm going to go now, view these tool matches. You can see all of their primary tool type is visualization. That does not mean that's their only capability for tool types. And you can also see I have some relevant matches listed here. So these relevant matches, as it says here, are going to match my, very necessary filters to match, like the climate change topics and my geography, but they might, cost a little bit more money, like this model or this visualization tool, or they might just be a little bit more difficult to use. But so I have some exact matches here. There are some great options. We've got Coastal Resilience 2.0, the CCH portal, Coastal Flood Exposure Mapper, and the Sea Level Rise Viewer. And at this point, all I would have to do is go through, read a little bit more, make sure that that's the tool I'm most interested in, get a good visual of what it would look like to use the tool. I can learn some strengths, some limitations, who the target audience that's intended is, the contact information in case I have any questions specific for the tool developer. And of course, we pull any publications that may be relevant, so like case studies or tutorial videos or actual publications. We'll throw those in here too, so that you have all of the information that you should need to determine whether this tool is the right one for you. And then you'd be able to go and get the tool. So that's that. I have really quickly just a little bit more information. If you are interested in Gulftree, we are going to get some Train the Trainer workshops coming very, very soon. There are going to be 7 workshops, and they're starting in December, going through January. There are 7 different locations, and while they are all virtual, we do recommend you go for your specific location if possible. They're half-day workshops in the mornings, and with them you can develop an advanced understanding of Gulftree and be able to help other users, because there are a lot of tips and tricks that I was not able to cover in this quick demo. So that's all I have. Hopefully, I don't think I went over too much time, but I don't think we have time for questions now. So hopefully, if I'll be around for after everyone else's presentations.
Excellent, McKelly. I was just, you were spot on. I was getting ready to come in and give you your warning. So you are awesome. Thank you for adhering to the time. And please, while the others are presenting, if you want to cut and paste your bit.ly link into the chat box, people can have that and register for your training sessions.
Will do.
So with that, again, if you've got questions for Michaela about Gulftree, please put them in the chat box. We'll circle back around and have time to chat with her more later. But let's move on to Christi and Rosalie. Rosalie, it's all yours. Any markets that go?
Hi, Dave. Can everyone see my screen? Looks good and hear me? Also,
What?
Dave, I wanted to.
Hello? Are you there?
Can you hear me?
What?
Stop it, Dave. Oh my
I know,
God.
I'm just kidding.
I was going to thank you for the shout out, but now I'm not going to. Also, I'll personally accept that participation award on GRIIDC's behalf, and you can send the check to me. So thank
Okay, that's a piece of candy.
you. I'll take it. Well, hi, everybody. Thanks so much for participating. My name is Rosalie Rossi, and I'm the program manager for GRIIDC. And today I just wanted to kind of go over a little bit of background information about us because I'm not sure everybody's aware of us, and then just give a short demo of our new search application that we just rolled out this year. So for those of you who don't know, GRIIDC is a multidisciplinary data repository for Gulf of Mexico research. So after the Deepwater Horizon oil spill, BP committed $500 million to fund an independent research program to study the effects, which was the Gulf of Mexico Research Initiative. So after that, BP and the Gulf of Mexico Alliance created a master research agreement, which included this mandate that all of the data collected must be made accessible with minimum time delay. So hence GRIIDC was born. We were created to house the data that was collected by GOMRI researchers. So our mission is to ensure a data and information legacy that promotes continual scientific discovery and public awareness of the Gulf of Mexico ecosystem. We are primarily a Gulf of Mexico data repository. So just a little bit about us. We're based out of the Harte Research Institute for Gulf of Mexico Studies at Texas A&M University-Corpus Christi. We have a team of software developers and data curators, and we're led by a director, program manager, and we have a technical coordinator as well. So what exactly do we do? We assist researchers with data management planning. So before they even go out and collect their research, we help them understand how to organize that data when they go collect it. We do this also by offering data management training. So we create really detailed guidance documents for specific data types. We also do webinars and workshops to make sure that the researchers know really good data organization best practices. Our software development team, they develop and maintain our site. So we're continuously trying to improve our site to help researchers easily use our system. That is our main goal, is we want this to be as easy as possible for researchers to submit the data and then also for researchers to be able to download and use the data. We curate dataset packages. So every dataset that comes into our site, we look at, we make sure that we can open files, we make sure that it's well documented, that all the data that another researcher would expect to be in there is in there. We implement dataset discovery tools. You know, we not only collect this data, we want to make sure that everybody can search for it and find it. We can associate data sets with publications. So if there is a publication that is associated with that data set, we provide a link to each other. And then we just make data sets available for use because that's the whole point of this site. So currently right now, these are the data that are in GRIIDC. Of course, we have GOMRI data, that's how we started. But however, throughout the years, we have ingested data from other groups, the Restore Act Centers for Excellence programs. So we have the Mississippi and the Florida and Texas Restore Act program data in our system. We are also working with a few others. We're about to be getting some data from the GRP, National Academies of Science GRP program, and also the NOAA Red Snapper Abundance Grant. So that will be coming our way soon. And then of course, we'll be getting, we have Harte data, and we'll be getting more Harte data into our system because that's where we're based out of. So GRIIDC is very different from other repositories in that we're not a single discipline. We house multiple types of data. This is because of how we started. In order to study the effects of an oil spill, you need different types of research, different types of data. So we have data from biology to social science, oceanography, a whole bunch of different types. So I like to say we house data that other repositories, you know, there's not a home for them. So they they're in our repository, and I think that makes us really unique. So just some by the numbers. We're really proud of this. We have over 3,000 data sets, almost 84 terabytes of data in our system. This represents 394 research groups and over 2,800 people in our system. And this is based on status. So because data sets go through a data package curation process, they might be in different statuses depending on where they are in that process. So we currently have 2,700 that are available. That means these are ready to go. You can download them, use them. 164 have restrictions. So we do allow a researcher to put an embargo on the data for a limited amount of time. Of course, if they publish on that data, it'll need to be publicly available. But this gives them some peace of mind as they're writing their publication, things like that. But then we can go ahead and get started curating that data. We have 231 that are in our review process, and then we have 145 that are identified. So I just wanted to kind of quickly go over our data management workflow. We're pretty proud of this, and we like to say that we need to start by training. So we really make an effort to train the researcher. We want to make sure that they have a good idea of how to organize their data before they even go and collect their data. So we do this, like I said before, with user guides, webinars, and workshops. After that, they need to plan for what they're going to collect. We require some groups to submit data management plans to us, so we help them with data management planning. And then others, every data set, you have to have a data set information form, and this is just a few, items of information that are needed before you go out and collect your data. So after the researchers collect the data, then they submit it to us through a very easy to use data set submission interface. And after that, like I mentioned, we review every data package that comes in. And every data set receives a digital object identifier. So that means the researcher can be credited if the data set is used. And then of course we focus on distribution. So we have our search site that I'm about to show you, and then also an ERDAP server for people to use. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and show you our search. And this is our homepage. So you can see there's three main things that you can do on our site. You can search for data, you can submit, and you can monitor data. So today I'm just going to go through the search, so you can access that here, or you can scroll down and access it from the main menu. So this is our new search that we just rolled out this year. You can see it's pretty simplified. It's a text search. We kept a link to our version 1 search. And the reason we did that is because it still has a pretty handy tool on it. So to access that, you can click on map search. And then you can see our old search page. So the old search page lists all the data sets in the different status, like I mentioned earlier, where they are in our data package review process. However, the reason we left this is because of this spatial extent search. So this is pretty handy. You can draw a filter. So if you're only looking for data in a specific area, you can draw a filter around it, and only the data sets that are in that area will display. Now, of course, some of the spatial extents are larger because they're models, but if any of the coordinates or range are within that area, they will show up. So we think that's pretty handy, and that's why we left that on. So to go back, you can just use the search version 2 button, and it'll take you back here. So of course, it's just a basic keyword search. We'll just start by searching for CTD. And then you can see all the results showing up down here. There's 260 results. So we added in these filters so you can search for in a specific field. So if you just want to search in the title or abstract, author, or theme keywords. So for this example, we'll just search title. And then of course, this is pretty handy. You can search for specific time periods. So you're looking for CTD data that goes back all the way in 2011. And we want to get maybe 2018, and then we can search for that, and it'll search for wherever CTD is shown in the title and where the temporal extent falls within this range. So this is part of the data curation package process where we are reviewing it, and we make sure that researchers provide us with really detailed temporal and spatial extents, and that helps enable this search and helps you find exactly what you need. And then on the side over here, we have different facets, so you can narrow it down even more. I mentioned the different status of data sets, so you can narrow it down to only those that are available. So you know that you need it, you need to download it immediately, so let's only search for those that are ready to go. It also shows the ones that are restricted, and then there's the category of submitted. So that just means that the researcher has submitted to us. It's not available yet, it's going through our review process. And then you can also narrow it down to the different funding organizations. So if you know you want a GOMRI-funded data set, you can narrow it down even farther. And then even farther with that, the research groups within. So for GOMRI, there were different research consortia, and then just different project names that fall within the funding organizations. So you can use these to get pretty detailed results depending on what you're looking for. So let's just say we only want available. And then you can see there's 116 results, and these are all the data sets. So with each result, we give a fair amount of information for you to make the decision to even click to get to the landing page. So you have the title, authors, when it was even published, the file formats that are within the data set, the digital object identifier, the unique data set identifier, which is just the GRIIDC identifier within our system, and then the file size, which is handy. So I'm going to go ahead and go to another one. So if you'd click on this, it would take you to the datasets landing page. So here's an example of a dataset landing page. It gives you a lot of information so that you know if you want to download it or not. So of course, there's the title. It has the research group or what consortium it's with. So this is a GOMRI-funded CARTH program. The DOI, so you can cite it, the dataset authors, all that good information, point of contact. And then here you can see, we can zoom in a little bit to the spatial extent and see here is a pretty detailed spatial extent that we created for this data set. And then if you scroll down, you can see some more details to help you determine if you want to download it or not. Of course, the suggested citation. So this is really important. You know, we really encourage, we want people to use this data, but we want to use them to use it appropriately, and we want them to cite the data set if they're using it so the researcher gets credit. So we provide a suggested citation with the DOI of the data set. And, you know, we are encouraging people to use this just like you would cite a publication. You can put this in the references of your publication if you are referencing a data set, because it is a work that is a reference. We also give you the abstracts. You can take a look and see if you even want this data set, the purpose, some theme keywords, the file format once again, the file name, and then this is handy. You can see how many times the data set has been downloaded. So if you scroll up, the whole point is, how do you download it? Well, you can click this handy button right here. It says download data set, and it'll tell you the estimated download time based on your current connection speed. So I picked a small one, that's good, 20 megabytes. It would take 4 seconds. Some might take longer, and it'll tell you the estimated time period for that. Some of our data sets are very large and they're in cold storage, so it'll download a file manifest, and then you'll contact GRIIDC and let us know which files out of that data package you would like to request, and we will send it to you. And then you can also download the metadata here, which is in XML. And then also over here, you can look at the metadata. So we have just the simple metadata that you can look at. You can read all the information, keywords, use constraints, all the coordinates are in there, supplemental information, methods, all that information, point of contact. If you just love raw XML, you can take a look at the raw XML on this button here. And then here's the handy button with publications. I mentioned that we link publications and data sets. So once we know that a data set is associated with a publication, we can link it in our system, and then it'll list all the publications. So then that'll be a link to that publication, and that's just another place where your data set is found, and it's just another connection. And with GOMRI researchers, GOMRI was required to actually provide an attribution statement in their publication with the dataset's DOI. So that's just another link back to this site, and that's just providing more exposure for your data set. So that's all I have. I just really wanted to show everybody our new search page. We feel like it is way easier to use. It has lots of information. We really want people to take a look. We've gotten our site to this really easy to use site for researchers to submit data to us. We really want to promote that the data is here to use. It's here to use in a responsible manner. All data sets have DOIs. So please take a look and see, this just helps in lessening replicating data, saving resources, things like that. So if anybody has any questions, I'm not sure how much time I have, but I can answer them afterwards if we don't have enough time.
Yes, absolutely. You guys are great. Again, Rosalie, thank you for doing that. We're at the end of your time, and I didn't have to come in and cut you off because you were wrapping up. So that's good. So if you guys have questions for Rosalie or GRIIDC, please pop them in the chat box and we can cover them after this last presentation. So up next, again, staying with the theme, we've got Jess from Ducks Unlimited. This is going to be talking about Deepwater Horizon Project Tracker. And so this one really, again, with GRIIDC is kind of special because, it shows the collaborative nature of the Alliance and what we do. We've got Ducks Unlimited that's participating with us. And, from a Florida perspective, Ducks Unlimited snatched our Chief Executive Officer, Nick Wiley, and took him over, and he's now the Chief Conservation Officer for Ducks Unlimited. Side bit of too much information for you guys out there, but there you go. So Jess, I'm going to turn it over to you and you're on.
Thank you. I assume you can hear me okay?
Yes.
Excellent. Yes, we did steal someone from Florida, and he's been great. So thank you for that. So yeah, today I'm going to demo the Deepwater Horizon Project Tracker. This is a story map. I decided to be different today. And if you'd like to look at this on your own, you can follow this bit.ly URL right here, and it'll take you to the story map, and you can just peruse it by yourself if you want to. So just a little bit of an introduction. I imagine that many of you in the Gulf have pretty vivid memories of this day. So a reminder that the Macondo oil well exploded in 2010. It was considered to be, I think it was considered to be one of the world's worst environmental disasters of at that time. And this caused 11 deaths. It spilled a lot of oil into the Gulf of Mexico. And they had a hard time sealing the well. I think it took over 81 days, according to the EPA. They capped it around July 15th. And while that oil was flowing, there was a lot of damage to the environment. There was a lot of direct and indirect harm to wildlife. It also really negatively impacted the economy, especially in the Gulf, with the Gulf fishing and tourism. And a lot of folks were exposed to oil and ended up suffering health problems. So when all was said and done, the parties that were found responsible included BP, Transocean, MOEX, Halliburton, and Anadarko. And they paid a fair number of fines, penalties, settlements, and voluntary payments as a result of this disaster. I did a little off-the-cuff summary. I was trying to figure out how much they ended up paying, and I think, based on my knowledge of all of these payments, that it ended up costing these corporations more than $25 billion. Some of that money is still being dispersed today. So, I mean, that's a good chunk of change. And the Deepwater Horizon Project Tracker was launched in 2014 as an effort to track some of this money. Specifically, we were interested in knowing what was happening, how they were funding research, recovery efforts, and restoration. And so we tend to collect spatial information, be it the location or the extent of projects if they're available. We also collect a fair amount of details about each individual project, and that means that this database can be used to answer some questions about the recovery process. And I will review some of those questions and how you might answer those using this tool. So just a little update. So just so you know, this information is updated on a quarterly basis. We collect this information directly from the funding programs that are dispersing this money. You can find our update schedule and our completeness table on the website. So I'll just bring you there really quickly. This is the front page of our website. It's dwhprojecttracker.org. And if you want to look at our update schedule, you would go to the About tab, click on About the Project Tracker, and click on the update schedule. And so you can see here that we have one more update. We're going to be publishing November 2nd. I'm working on that right now. And then we have 4 updates that will happen in 2021. Our completeness basically just tells you how many projects that we know of that are in the tracker, when we last updated that particular program, and whether or not the disbursement status is ongoing. Some of these programs are going to be going for 30 years. Some of them have completed their disbursement of all their funds. All right, so let's go on to the questions. So the first most general question that you could answer using this information is, how many projects have been funded and how much money has been dispersed? In my personal opinion, the easiest way to do that is to use our project summaries page, which just provides a high-level overview of what's going on. So this is the project summaries page. It's on this tab right here. This is a little Tableau setup at the Trust for Public Land setup for me. And of course, my internet's going to say that I'm not going to be allowed to use it right now, because that's what happens. There we go. So with this, you can get an overview of the number of projects, how much money has been spent on these projects. The Deepwater Horizon funder contributions are all the money dispersed using those settlements, fines, penalties, etc., that those 5 corporations paid out. The known leveraged funds, we use the word leveraged perhaps a bit loosely for some folks, so that may include co-funded funds as well. You can see this information in a couple ways. You can look at the map. You can also look at funding over time. You can look at funding by program just to get an overview of how much funding has been dispersed by program. And then you can also look at a table view, and that just shows all of the individual projects. You can click through to go to the individual project pages, and I'll show that in a minute using another tool that we have on this website. You can also filter this information if you want to look at a subset. So maybe you only want to look at a specific funding program, like the Gulf of Mexico Research Initiative. Maybe you're only interested in a particular state, or maybe you're only interested in environmental projects. If you want to filter by project actions, that basically means if it's a research project, the particular research theme. But it could also mean you only want to look at protection, projects that are focused on, let's say, protecting land, acquiring land through easements or so forth. And if you want to filter by project resource, that means what is this project impacting? Are they restoring fish habitats, or are they adding new infrastructure? And so you can filter by all of these categories and see all this information just for those particular categories. And so if you want to use this little story map and interact with it, you can do that. So another thing that this project tracker can do is it can give you an overview about the funds. Specifically, where is this money coming from and who is dispersing it? And so that is on 2 pages. We have a page that's called About the Deepwater Horizon Funding Programs. And as you can see, I just have it showing the National Academies of Sciences. This basically tells you key details about the main funding programs, such as what are the main themes that they're funding, what are the controlling documents, what's the program length, how much money, and so forth. And this particular page is found again in the About the Deepwater Horizon funding programs. We also have a page that gives you a little bit of an overview of the origin of all the funds. So if you're someone who's really interested in looking at legalese, you can click through to see, the guilty plea agreements. And so that's also right here. So some folks may also want to use our web map viewer to do more detailed searches of projects, and that is also known as our dashboard. So this is a searchable map. It shows the locations and extents of all the projects in the tracker. Once again, it's filterable. You can filter the map view. You can view individual project details. You can actually add your own map layers to compare if you wish. I'm just going to show you a few things that you can do with this. So just to orient yourself, we have this tabular setup at the bottom here that you can remove if you're not interested in, but you can actually use this to filter projects using complicated expressions. If that is something you are not interested in, what you can do very simply is you can actually filter all points and polygons extents using this neat little tool here. So let's say you're really only interested in looking at a particular funding program. In 2 clicks, you can get a map of those particular projects. And if I'll just scroll in, if we have the extents of the project area in the database, you'll be able to see those. And so right here, we can see that this was an easement that was acquired using the MOEX Supplemental Environmental Project. If you want to see more information, you click on the project report, and that'll take you to the individual project page, which provides basically all the information we have for it. You know, who did it, how much was funded, what was the funding organization and the funding program, what did they do with this money, who's the main contact, an external project website, and who are the project partners and affiliated institutions. And then if you want, you can also look at all the raw data that we have, which may or may not include more information, like if it was an easement, and if it was an easement, how many acres were acquired, when did that easement close, and so forth. So there's a quite amount of data, a lot of data for some of these projects, depending on what type of projects they are. Now, the reason why we have both points and polygons on here is because there's a diverse types of data. There are diverse types of data in this tracker, and sometimes having an extent doesn't really make sense. Also, the extents, there's a lot of extents, and so if you have a map of everything, it can get a little messy. And so what you can do is you can just unclick the project footprints and just look at the points if you're just interested in those. And then you can, again, search the project points using these pretty easy filters here. For example, if you just want to look at Florida, you would just go, hey, I want to look at all the projects that are have Florida in, you know, that were somewhat affiliated with Florida, and that would be these projects here. The reason why you see Florida projects not in Florida is because some of these are multi-state projects that include multiple states, but they only have 1 point. So that is the dashboard. What else do I want to say about this? If you are interested, you can also use the measurement tool, see what the latitude longitude is. You can measure the distance between projects if you're super interested in that. You can also measure an area if you're interested in that. Okay. And finally, if you are someone who would prefer to use your own program to analyze the data, you are absolutely welcome to download the data. We have a download site on our page. You can, if you're only interested in the tabular information, you either click through to the point layer or the polygon layer. Either of them will do. And then very simply, you click on the download link and you can pull it down as a spreadsheet, and that will allow you to open it up as a CSV in either Excel or any other program you're interested in. If you want to use this online map in your own online map, you can pull our REST API service from here. So I guess the last kind of question that people, I think is sort of interesting is, you know, what have the Deepwater Horizon funds accomplished? You know, this project, well, I would say this happened 10 years ago. So there's been a lot of restoration and recovery effort that's gone on, and it's going to continue for a while still as these funds are being dispersed. And it's sort of interesting to see what folks have been doing with this money to, you know, do stuff like restore habitats and wildlife, or maybe, you know, restore. I'm interested in you know, how the restoration and protection of migratory bird habitats is going on as someone who works for Ducks Unlimited. As an aside, I often get people asking me why there are projects up in the north and not in the Gulf, and it's basically because in 2011 BP was fined for violating the Migratory Bird Treaty Act, and so a lot of this money was put into the North American Wetlands Conservation Fund for migratory bird species, and so those are often their what was I going to say, the other areas in which they either migrate through or breed.
2-minute warning, Jess.
I am almost done. Thank you. Awesome. This is my last slide. Finally, you know, if you're interested, we do have a lot of information about research projects in the database, you know, because this wasn't the last oil spill, it wasn't the first, and we need to know how best to prevent and respond to oil spills. So you can also peruse those projects and see what was happening there. Yep, and that is it. Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks, Jess. Way to wrap it up right there at the end. And we're done. Thanks. So again, thanks to all of you guys for presenting today, you know, to Rosalie and Michaela and Jess. So, you know, again, big virtual round of applause for all of the presenters. I can't thank you guys enough for taking your time to do that. So now we're into the questions and discussion part of the tool time. And don't see anything in the chat box, but is there anybody out there that has any specific questions? And we'll start with Jess since she was on last. Has anybody got anything that they want to ask Jess about the tracker? You can unmute or type it in the chat box. Okay, well, since I don't see anything yet, I've watched the tracker grow over the years, and I didn't realize I actually learned some things today that I wasn't aware of, Jess. So kudos to you for sharing. I think the legalese documents that you have added to that is impressive, you know, because that's not important to everybody, but it's really handy to have for those that need it, right? Because it's when somebody wants something like that, that's a great place to have it. And when you need it when you want it, right? Or you want it when you need it. So you were talking about the data that's in the tracker. And I don't want this to be confused with the data that's in GRIIDC since they're very closely related. So can you speak to project level data versus maybe data set level data and what you're talking about when you talk about downloading project data and metadata?
Yeah, and so that's correct. GRIIDC is really focused on the actual data of each project, of each research project. When I say data in the Deepwater Horizon project tracker, really it's metadata. It's descriptive information about each project: the who, the what, the where, the when, the how, and the how much. If you, we do link, when it comes to GOMRI projects, we do link back to GRIIDC, I do believe, so people can actually connect to the data through the tracker if they wish. But it's all that data is on GRIIDC in a really cool tool.
Excellent. All right, well, cool. That was, and thanks for that explanation. I just want to make sure that people understood the difference between project level metadata and data, and then data set level metadata and data. So with that, I'm going to flip over. I think Eric's posted a question to Rosalie. You know, for GRIIDC, can you query for a single variable across data sets? So Rosalie, I think that one's for you.
Unfortunately, you can't. You can only query keywords and terms. But that's something that when we are doing our data package review process, we really try to get good keywords, theme keywords, place keywords in there so that, not just generalized, but a species, and sometimes some parameters, a specific parameter. But for what you're asking, no, it's not, it doesn't dig that deeply down into the data set.
So along those lines, when, and this is another project that I've watched grow over the years, and it's just a phenomenal effort that you guys have done, being the master research database for the GOMRI, project, the effort. And I know that you guys are accepting data from other participants. How difficult, is that process? I know there's always, considerations to make, but if people are looking for places to put large data sets or any size data sets, other than maybe some more of the perks to using GRIIDC versus something else.
Yeah, so we are taking other data, like I mentioned on that slide. We have data from other groups, so we're accepting contracts from other groups. We've been working, with GOMRI researchers for 10 years, and now as the scene is changing, data sharing is very abundant in this world of ours, and so more grants are requiring it, more funding agencies, more journals. So researchers are contacting us before they even write their proposal to ask for a quote, because now that grant is requiring that the data have to be publicly available. So if people are interested, they can contact us. But what makes us different is that we're very hands-on, like I showed with that cycle, the data management cycle.
Right.
We're there from the beginning, and we provide a lot of training. So we make it easy. Our site is easy to use, so it's not that people need that information really to know how to submit to us. It's really about getting it into a good format before it's ready to be shared to everyone. Because you can give us a data set, that doesn't mean it's organized, it doesn't mean all the parameters are described, it doesn't mean the units are there. So we work one-on-one with researchers to help them get that package in a good place so that others can use it in the future, because that's the whole point. So I think that sets us apart from others. And then, like I mentioned earlier too, about the different data set types, a lot of repositories are very discipline specific, and we accept a variety of data types. So you may not have a repository that accepts that type of data, but we will. We're generally Gulf of Mexico focused, but other than that, we accept a variety of different types.
That's very good information, and I'm glad you shared it. And I think it's important for people to hear that you have a dedicated team that will help the scientists, the researchers, massage and prepare their data for collect once, use multiple times type of scenario. One last question, if I don't see anybody else that's got anything in the chat box. So when you were showing your version 1 and version 2 of the search, and you've got the map, do you guys have any plans on joining those two, like the map feature?
Yes. We
Okay.
planned on providing the map feature with the new search version. But for now, we have other priorities for development. We're actually developing, focusing on submission with multiple files, so helping people submit a little bit easier. So we have a long list of to-do for our developers, but yes, we definitely want to eventually incorporate it into that new version, so it's in one place and everyone can see it. But for now, we have at least that link to the previous version.
Excellent. All right, any other questions for GRIIDC and or Jess for the tracker? All right, so Gulftree, Michaela, you're not getting off the hook that easy. Who's got questions for Michaela? And again, I've watched Gulftree grow over the years. Throw out your questions, put her on the spot, give her something she can't answer. Okay, I'll take a shot at it. So Michaela, how often, again, wonderful tool that you've got, and a lot of information that's in your tool that you guys can query on. How often do you update that list? I mean, you've got 108 tools in there now, but obviously care and feeding for the child, how how does that work for you guys? And is it a team that does that? And what's the review process?
Yeah, and I see that we actually also got that question coming in at the chat, like as you were asking it, which is funny. So yes, Gulftree is updated, let's say routinely, but there is always, I think, more to do. We are always getting tools sent to us and having other tools on the list. I personally go through and check out every single tool that we put on Gulftree. So it's a long process, but doing this can ensure that, you know, it's a third party. I'm not going to be advertising any specific tool. It's completely independent. So the information on there is completely based off of facts. And I just send the tool database entry to whoever the actual tool developer is, so that they can check it off, make sure that it's completely accurate. And I'm not like saying that their tool can do something that it can't, or can't do something that it can. But as far as the timing for like how often it gets updated, it's not like a specific routine update for just like tool additions or retirings. That's as it is appropriate, as it becomes necessary. And then for our actual updates of the site structure itself, Gulftree was only released a couple of years ago, actually in 2018. So it's still relatively new. We are starting to look at applying for funds to kind of update the administrative side of things, make sure that everything is going to be good to run for quite a while longer. Because we work off of soft money, it makes it a little bit more complicated to make that work. But this way we can actually make sure that it will last long into the future, despite the wonderful world of soft money funding.
Yeah, that's tough. I've been there and done that as well. So kind of a follow-up to that is, when somebody says they've got a tool, all right, I got this great tool, I want it to be in, I want you guys to put it in your tree. Is that I send the link to you guys and then you look at it yourself, and or you and your team look at it, and then you send it to a developer, an actual program developer that would then compare what it does to what you say it does, or what they say it does?
So
explain, I was a little explain that process a little bit more, please.
Sure. So essentially, people have a lot of different options for submitting a tool for review. If you go onto Gulftree's website, you can actually find a link in our FAQs on like how to actually submit a tool for review. You can also just email that generic email, or I think you'll all have my email now, and you are welcome to just clutter my inbox with tool recommendations. But essentially, I will hear about a tool through a variety of different methods, and when I do, I will go through it and try out the tool. Takes however long it takes, right, depending on the tool, and I'll collect the information that we need for our database. And then when I have collected all of the information that I need, and I feel like it's at the level it needs to be at, then I will send it to whoever developed that specific tool. As much as I can find a person, obviously for some of the federal agencies, it's a little bit more difficult to find a specific person to review.
Yep.
But that way they know their tool, they know what it can do, but it won't have, you know, the advertising language. Some of the time there's specific quirks that they want to adjust just to make sure that it's fully accurate, and doesn't have any of the pretty language that some of us like to throw in.
Right. Okay, so that makes sense. So you're sending it back to the developer itself to make sure that your description matches their intent for what they put it out there for.
Exactly.
Okay, excellent. All right, so and then you actually kind of addressed Sonia's question as well for what's the process. So Sonia, FAQ on the Gulftree website is got how you can submit something to Gulftree for review. So that's awesome. All right, so that's all the questions I got. Who else? Anybody else? Well, guys, all right, so I think we'll go to the next slide here. I think that's it for the questions and discussions for today's webinar. The next one is, the next webinar we have is November 10th, and I believe that the theme for that one I had it pulled up here. Give me just a second. It is November 10th. Oh, we're going to be talking about watersheds, flooding, and basins. Oh my. So be sure to mark your calendars for the 10th at 2 p.m. Central, and back here, same tool time channel. And we will talk about watersheds, flooding, and basins. And with that, guys, thank you very much for your time today. Thanks again. Big round of applause to all the presenters. And we look forward to seeing you all back here again on the 10th at 2 o'clock. Thank you very much.
Thanks.